Well, it's great to be here with all you evil capitalists and money-grubbing types out there tonight. I think all of us are pretty blown away by some of the scenes in this movie altogether. And I think that what I'd like just to ask you, first of all, Michael, is this incredible footage that you got. This is what really, I think, is interesting. I mean, the scenes of the foreclosures, which are so harrowing at the beginning. Tell us about how you got those scenes in that first series of sequences with the family of four in that little house in Miami, I think it was, wasn't it?
Well, the first eviction at the beginning of the film is from a videotape that was just sent to me randomly in the mail by a family in North Carolina who thought that I would possibly maybe do something if I could see an eviction from the inside out. And so we popped it in, and we were watching it and not knowing what was going to happen next. It was kind of harrowing, actually, the first time I remember watching it, not knowing what was really going to happen. But I get things sent to me all the time, so a lot of people...
So that material was in fact sent to you?
That was sent to me just as the whistleblower who fingers Senator Dodd was the person who sent me an email. So the internet has actually eliminated any sort of middleman to where people can obviously, they can contact you or me or anybody, and it makes it easy to get a lot of stuff in it, and I am able to put it in a film like this. So.
Now, but the Hacker family in Peoria that we really got to know quite intimately in the film, you had to find them because that was in real time. That was happening as your cameras were there.
Right. That was because one of our associate producers, Eric Weinrod, lots of fans already. He wanted to go down to Peoria because Caterpillar was going through a lot, and that was the original reason he went down there. Went to the sheriff's office, saw how many evictions they were doing, got, sort of kind of looked at the list, took down some names and addresses, and then went, I guess eventually got to the Hacker house and decided to park himself with them there to see whether or not, the sheriff was going to be evicted. So he was there for days, and it's sort of the patience of, Eric also was the person, that strike in Chicago, we were the only camera crew they allowed in, that strikers allowed in. So we were there for 5 or 6 days with them. But, and again, they sent us an email, and we made this film out of Traverse City, Michigan, is where we were based. And we got an email, and they said, we're taking over the factory. And the next day, Eric and another person went down there, and we got a local crew in Chicago, and they welcomed us into the plant. But this is because of, I would guess, 20 years of making movies to give voice to these people that have no voice, that don't have the ability to either make a movie or publish a paper or
now, what have they seen the movie, the people in the movie?
Well, actually, I believe the Hacker family from Peoria is here tonight. Are you here, Randy and Donna? Where are you? Well, come on up there. Stand up. Woo!
I'm sure that everybody here would like to know what you think of the movie, Mr. and Mrs. Hacker. Are you there?
What's that?
What do you think of the movie?
I think it's great.
It's the first time they saw it.
Wow.
But literally, their home was stolen from them. I don't want to get into all the details right now, but I retained an attorney for them, and we've already gone through the first steps to do the discovery to find out just how this theft took place by Citibank and everyone else concerned. And I have high hopes that we're going to be able to get them back in their house sometime, hopefully in the next few months. So.
I think the other footage, there are two other pieces of footage that totally blew me away. One was the Countrywide sort of, that whole section on Countrywide. I mean, we've all read this story, but there is something so unbelievably staggering about seeing that crooked face of Mozilla and then cutting to the Christopher Dodd sequence. Did you just decide to go after that story after reading it, or was it about a search for footage, or how did you come onto that section?
No, it was, like I said, it was that man, Bob Feinberg, who was in charge of the VIP loans at Countrywide. I put out an email or an internet request to please be a whistleblower. If you work for Wall Street, if you work for these investment firms or these banks, mortgage companies, send us the goods, and I will be your conduit to get the truth out to the American people. And he was one of those people, and he sent the documents, and there it was, and it was amazing, and it was full of Democrats, and it was.
Do you think there's been a failure of investigative journalism?
What's that?
Do you think there's been a failure of investigative journalism, that this has been really it's been left to you to dramatize this quite so
well, I've always
scarily?
Yeah, I've always felt that if it has to come down to a guy who has a high school education, he's wearing a ball cap, we're really in deep trouble. So I never felt comfortable with this, but when you said investigative journalism, that's why I'm sorry, I didn't know what you were referring to, because that's gone now. Television really.
Formerly known as.
Yeah, television doesn't do it, and we're in the last year of reading a daily newspaper. So, this is one of the tragic things that have happened. Capitalism and greed have killed our daily newspapers. And, I had actually a section I took out of this film because I thought this deserves its own movie, perhaps, of why we are not going to have a daily newspaper next year, anywhere.
And what was the section?
It was about showing how capitalism essentially is responsible for the death of our newspapers for two reasons. Number one, I interviewed David Simon from The Wire that produced that show, and he was a reporter for the Baltimore Sun, and he tells this story of how back in the 90s, when they were Baltimore Sun was bought, I believe, by the LA Times or whoever on the Chandler family, I guess at that time. They started all these layoffs and buyouts, and the Baltimore Sun got rid of the labor beat, the courts beat, and the poverty beat. Well, this is Baltimore. The reason why people read the paper in Baltimore is because it covers these subjects that affect their daily lives. Papers stopped covering these things because they thought they could make bigger profits by getting rid of reporters. People will still buy the paper, but will have less content, which is absolute insanity. People stop buying it. And they blame the internet. They blame you. They blame the others. And the truth is that the New York Times had a great story on this a few weeks ago. The newspapers in Europe aren't folding. They'll have daily newspapers, print newspapers next year.
It's true. It's up to
and I think they have the internet.
No, I totally
So the reason is because in Europe, they fund themselves primarily, number one, with circulation. Advertising is number two. Here, advertising is the main source of funding. Circulation, in other words, the people who are reading the paper are number two. So if you put the people, secondary to the advertising community, then people are going to stop buying the paper. Can I give you one other reason for this?
I know.
I get so. I'm so upset about this. In the 17 elections between 1940 and 2004, the majority of American newspapers endorsed the Republican for president in 14 of those 17 elections. In other words, they endorsed the party that wanted to dismantle the Department of Education, that wants to decrease funding for education, wants to bust the teachers union. And now we have a country with 40 million adults who are functional illiterates, who can't read and write above a 4th grade level, and another 40 million that can't comprehend above a fourth grade level. And the newspapers are wondering, gee, Paul, why don't people buy the paper anymore? Because you slit your own throat. You enact presidents and policies that have ruined this country and turned us into a nation of semi-literates and ignoramuses. I have my water
now. Okay, so the footage about Roosevelt. Come on, tell us about Roosevelt, because that footage is extraordinary.
Well, you are amongst the first Americans to see that footage. For some reason, the footage was lost, it was buried, it was misplaced. I'm not quite sure what the story is. But in the newsreel that week, they didn't run his second Bill of Rights speech. They ran other parts of the State of the Union speech. And we had read about this second Bill of Rights, and so one of our editors, John Walter, had said, why don't we see if there's footage of this? So we have this great archival team. Many of them have worked with me for many, many years. Absolutely. They are relentless, and they call the Roosevelt Library in Hyde Park, and the Roosevelt Library tells them there is no footage of that speech. But saying that to us, saying, no to us is like, that's just gasoline for our fire. So our archival people, they start a search across the country looking for this. They find an archive in South Carolina. And it's not marked. They have no record of it either. They said, well, we have this Roosevelt stuff here on these newsreels. Well, can you send it up to us in Michigan? Sure. They send it up, and in this thing, it was unmarked. It wasn't categorized. It wasn't cataloged, anything. And there it is. And no one had ever licensed it. No one had ever seen it. And when this opens on Wednesday, the American people are going to see his vision of this, what he wanted for this country, that he filmed 65 years ago. And he only filmed that one part. He only wanted that part filmed because he wanted to leave behind a filmed record of what he hoped America could be. And unfortunately, nobody got to see it. And now we're going to bring it to the American public via this movie. So.
When you talk about your process like that, it's an extraordinary thing to hear a filmmaker doing that, because, you're sort of flying blind with a meter run. How does that work? Because that's really more, your process is more like the process that a writer goes in when they sort of stumble around and look for stuff, but the meter isn't running. And in your case, it just seems such a kind of brilliantly random and yet focused process. I don't know how you do that with a meter running. How long did it take you to put all this together?
I'd like to say something that would make me sound smart, but it's full of a lot of chaos, the way I work, and we put this film together, and the bulk of this film, we started working on it a year and a half ago, but the bulk of what you saw was put together in the last, I would say, roughly 6 or 7 months. I just have a great team of people. I have great editors and field producers. And again, a lot of us have worked together for quite some time. There's a number of people that worked on this film, that worked on Bowling for Columbine and Fahrenheit 9/11. Others were critical to the success of Sicko. Some people worked on TV Nation. We write the film after we shoot it. That's a crazy, ass-backwards way of making a movie, obviously, but that's mostly how documentaries are made. You write it in the edit room, and so...
And then you were saying in the green room that you actually free associate as you watch it, and that's the commentary, because I thought it was a written script.
No, I've pretty much stopped writing my narration and then recording it, because it feels like acting, I guess, and I'm trying to keep this as true to nonfiction as possible. So now, when I do my narration, I have a little microphone. I sit in the edit room, and I'm watching it with the editor, and I just start riffing on, whatever's in my head, and as I'm watching it, because I want to be affected. I want the true affectation of whatever it is that's hitting me as I'm watching this. It's, you know, I say it, and sometimes I wait right till we're in the sound mix, and it's up on the screen, and I know then what I need to say, and they just hand me the microphone. I don't go in a booth or anything like that. I just take the microphone and I just speak to the screen, whatever is in my head or my heart or whatever. So.
Now, what was the single thing that you found in the course of doing this movie that shocked you the most, that made you the most kind of excited about what you found?
Well, it's all crazy stuff. Dead peasants insurance, pilots who are paid $16,000 a year by United and American and Delta. I mean, there's so many things. Maybe what was personally surprising is that in this film, I was invited into the homes of Republicans who asked me for help. I briefly show the George W. Bush commemorative plate in the woman's home, the Dead Peasants Insurance. The people that send me the videotape of the eviction, their door has 4 of those metallic yellow ribbons, support the troops. The police are trying to bash through on the other side of that. And that a number of people who maybe don't necessarily share my politics or I share theirs, or who have agreed with me in the past, have come to a place of looking to me, looking to us, my group here that makes these films, that with a sense of, I guess, maybe believing that we're going to stand up for them, and that I'll never judge. I don't care who you voted for president. If this is happening to you and you're getting the crap kicked out of you by the system, I'll come and help you out no matter what. And there's no litmus test about who you voted for or whatever. So, but I mean that's not the Michael Moore presented to you, brought to you by the Fox News Channel or Rush Limbaugh. Or
well, does it surprise you at the moment that the current sort of upsurge of anger that we keep seeing on the talk shows and on the radio, talk radio, etc., and this whole kind of Glenn Beck phenomenon? A lot of what your movie talks about is how the peasants must revolt. There must be a movement, a populist movement against the capitalist society that you feel has betrayed them. And yet a lot of the anger that we're seeing at the moment seems to be coming, in fact, to the opposite conclusion of your movie. They're angry not with the financial establishment so much as big government. I mean, there's something strange to me. Is there something strange to you about that? That in fact, that the revolution that you're talking about, the upsurge at the moment, is really coming from the other side.
I'm not surprised by that. I think history is full of examples of when people are beaten down, when they've lost their jobs, when things are starting to seem pretty hopeless. The right has always come in to take advantage of that, to manipulate that. It's the fertile ground of all fascism, really.
I mean, to those people, they hate you almost more than they hate President Obama.
I don't know why
How do you figure that?
Well,
because they share your grievances, but they've come to the opposite conclusion.
But I think that's why that those on the left, myself included, need to double and triple our efforts to reach out to the people who are being hurt right now. If we give up this ground to the other side, believe me, that we know from history that always works. But I'm essentially trying to say that we, the left, the liberal agenda, the Democratic Party, whatever, will help you take you down a different road, one that I think is going to be more successful because you're just being used by the other side. And that's my message. And I think that this, in the little bit of testing that the studio has done and the screenings that we've had around the country, it's been amazing. We've packed theaters in Detroit and Pittsburgh, in Minnesota this past week with factory workers, laid off workers, the kinds of the Joe the Plumber types that the right appeals to. And that's been the most amazing thing I've seen in this last week, to see them be presented with a different set of truths and analysis of why they're in the situation they're in. And it's been powerful. It's been personally powerful for me. I mean, it was great to see it with everyone here tonight, but man, watching it with that crowd in Pittsburgh, they were out of their seats. They were like, during the film, the steelworker was sitting in there, and it's just down the aisle, and in that part where the judges are putting the kids in the juvenile home so they can make a profit. This guy just kind of rises half up out of his seat, and he's just shouting at the screen, "Shame! Shame!" And it's like, whoa, dude, you know?
There's a lot of religion in this movie. I mean, that's new for your movies. I mean, there's a lot of Catholic priests. As you saying that you wanted to be a priest. Are you going down that route now? Is there anything you'd like to say?
I actually went to the seminary to be a priest. I didn't say that in the film. Well, I lasted a year, you know. I begged my parents to go. They let me go when I was 14, and by the time I turned 15, you know, things kicked in. So, I read the rule book.
But it was so funny, when the last day at the seminary, I go in to tell the head priest that I'm leaving, I'm not coming back next year. And I sit down, and the first thing he says to me is, "Michael, we'd like to ask you not to return next year." Well, you can't do that, I came in here to quit. And he says, I said, why don't you want me to come back? And he says, "Because you ask too many questions." So I just, listen, I've never discussed religion. I don't think people should discuss it. I think it's a private matter. But again, I think I've made the mistake of allowing myself to be defined to much of middle America by the Fox News Channel and these other crazies as some sort of godless, anti-American, you know, whatever. And the truth of the matter is that my beliefs and the things I do are based and grounded very deeply in my own faith and the way I was raised. And I love this country dearly and the people in it. And I think my movies are acts of patriotism and not anything but that. And you know, I've had to suffer a lot of abuse for sticking my neck out there and saying things and doing things.
You give back there, Michael. You do.
Well, but I don't give back in the way they do. I mean, I've never uttered the words, "I hate George W. Bush." I've never said that. I would never say that. I don't hate him. I will never hate him. I will not lower myself to that level that these people are in on the right, full of hate and nastiness and absolute, you know, George Bush is a human being. He deserves my respect as a human being. He does not deserve to be demonized. You know, I disagree with everything he stands for, and I am saddened by the ruin that he has made of this country and this planet. But just to go after him just because he exists, and this is what they do to me. I mean, this is, I don't want to repeat some of the things that Glenn Beck and Bill O'Reilly have stated, but if they were said on the radio in the country that you come from initially, that they would be taken off the air immediately. So, but that's okay. I'm willing to accept that. That's what goes with the territory.